Don't go in there, Tyler.
What do you mean?
We're gonna get out of here. Just stay calm. Watch out.
Did you hear that? What was that?
The road stretched out like an endless ribbon, winding deeper into the Appalachian hills. A beat-up Ford pickup rattled along the cracked pavement, its windows rolled down to let in the warm evening air. Inside, four friends laughed louder than the engine itself. Jake gripped the wheel, leaning back with the kind of swagger only he believed in. The open road was his playground, rules optional. Beside him, Melissa scrolled through her phone, holding it up now and then to record bits of their drive, her gums snapping in rhythm with the music blasting from the speakers. In the back seat, Tyler slouched with his cap pulled low, a smirk plastered across his face. Every mile was a setup for one of his jokes, each one landing harder than the last in his own mind. Next to him sat Amber, arms crossed, watching the blur of trees outside. She wasn't laughing. She never really did on these trips. Amber was the one who noticed the road signs, the one who muttered warnings under her breath while the others drowned her out with music. They weren't going anywhere specific. No plan, no map, no real destination. Just a weekend of noise and recklessness. Jake swerved around potholes like he was in a race, Melissa's camera catching every careless grin, Tyler shaking a can of soda like it was confetti, and Amber, her eyes kept drifting to the roadside warnings no one else seemed to care about. The first sign was simple: road closed ahead. Jake laughed and pressed harder on the gas. The second stood crooked, letters faded, flooded area. Melissa read it out loud, then laughed it off with a wave of her hand. Amber shook her head. "We should turn back," she said quietly. But her words were swallowed by the music, the engine, and Jake's confidence. The sun began to sink, painting the horizon in shades of orange and red. Shadows stretched across the pavement, long and thin, as though the forest itself was leaning in closer to listen. Then they saw it, a splintered wooden board nailed to a rotting post, pointing down a side trail half hidden by weeds. The paint had nearly peeled away, but a single word remained: scenic. Jake slowed the truck, grinning at the others. "Now this," he said, "is how you make a trip memorable." Melissa cheered him on, phone angled to catch the moment. Tyler whooped like it was the best idea of the day. Only Amber stayed silent, eyes locked on that sign as though the forest itself had written the warning. The truck's tires crunched over gravel as Jake turned the wheel. The main road disappeared behind them, swallowed by trees. The trail narrowed with every yard, branches scraping against the doors, shadows thickening until it felt like dusk had arrived early. The laughter inside the cab dimmed. The music still played, but it no longer matched the rhythm of their hearts. Amber whispered, "We shouldn't be here." And for the first time all day, no one laughed. The truck rolled deeper, the trail closing in like a throat. The sun vanished completely behind the hills, and the headlights carved two pale tunnels through the darkness. Somewhere ahead, the faint glimmer of water flickered between the trees, reflecting back like a pair of watching eyes. Jake leaned forward on the wheel, squinting into the gloom. The path twisted, the forest pressed tighter, and when they rounded the bend, the road itself was gone. All that lay ahead was the silent expanse of a black-water river. The truck idled at the edge of the swamp, headlights flickering against the dark current. None of them spoke. Somewhere beyond the rippling water, something moved. The wrong turn had already been made. The dirt trail ended abruptly, swallowed by swamp mud. The Ford pickup lurched to a stop, headlights spilling out over the dark expanse of a wide river. The water lay perfectly still, black as oil, reflecting nothing but the pale streaks of the moon above. The laughter inside the truck died. Four pairs of eyes stared out the windshield, the road gone, replaced by a waterway that stretched endlessly into shadow. Jake leaned back in his seat, trying to mask his unease with a grin. Guess the scenic route really does lead somewhere different. Melissa shifted closer to him, resting her hand on his arm. She smiled, not for the swamp, but for him. In that fleeting moment, she pressed her forehead against his shoulder, a gentle touch that softened the tension. The intimacy of it, the small, private closeness between two young lovers on a reckless trip, was real, grounding, and fragile. Tyler shattered the quiet with a laugh. "What's the big deal? It's just water." He pushed open the door before anyone could stop him, his sneakers sinking into mud. Amber leaned forward, voice tight. "Don't. This isn't safe." But Tyler was already rolling his jeans up to his knees, grinning at Melissa's phone as she filmed. "Come on, this'll be gold. You can post it later." He splashed into the shallows, arms spread wide as if daring the swamp to challenge him. That's when Amber noticed the tree. Its trunk stood crooked at the edge of the river, bark scarred by deep carvings, letters gouged into the wood, weathered but unmistakable. "Stay out of the water." Her heart sank. "Jake," she whispered, "we need to go. Now." Jake frowned, but Melissa only laughed nervously, zooming in on Tyler as he splashed further out. The air grew heavier, thick with humidity. Crickets silenced. Even the wind seemed to vanish. The world stilled. Then ripples. At first faint, like a stone tossed under the surface. Then wider, stronger. The water shifted in a perfect circle around Tyler's legs. He froze. Guys?" Before he could move, the river exploded. A monstrous shape surged upward, scales glistening in the headlights. A body thicker than a telephone pole, muscles rolling like iron cables beneath wet skin. In an instant, coils wrapped around Tyler, lifting him from the water. His scream tore through the night as bones cracked under the crushing power. Melissa dropped her phone, hands clamped over her mouth, tears spilling before she even realized she was crying. Amber screamed his name, but Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Run!" The three of them bolted into the forest, branches whipping their faces, hearts pounding like drums. But no matter how far they ran, no matter how many turns they took, the paths all bent back. Every trail led to the riverbank. The water rippled calmly now as though nothing had happened. Bottles they had tossed earlier floated in the moonlight, clinking softly together. The silence was worse than the scream. Melissa sobbed into Jake's chest, clutching him, her fear raw and unfiltered. Amber stared at the black water, trembling, knowing in her gut the swamp wasn't just a place, it was a trap. The headlights of the truck flickered once, then died, leaving them in near darkness. And in that silence beneath the surface of the river, something stirred again. Darkness pressed heavy over the swamp as the three remaining friends stumbled away from the riverbank. Melissa's sobs cut through the night, ragged and uncontrollable. Jake pulled her close, whispering, "I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you." But Amber wasn't comforted. Her anger broke through the silence. "This is your fault, Jake. You just had to take that road. Now Tyler's gone." Jake clenched his jaw, torn between guilt and pride. He didn't answer. He just kept moving, flashlight beam jittering over the tangled brush. They reached the truck at last, mud caked across its tires. Relief flickered, until Jake froze. The front wheel sagged flat, shredded on a coil of rusted barbed wire hidden in the dirt. Someone, or something, had laid the trap. Melissa collapsed against the door, sobbing harder. The gas gauge hovered just above empty, taunting them with false hope. The woods around them shifted. A branch cracked. Water sloshed somewhere behind the trees. The sounds were close, but the forest was too thick to see through. Jake scanned the darkness, flashlight beam trembling. Nothing, just shadows. Then Melissa cried out, falling to the ground. Her ankle twisted beneath her, pain etched across her face. Jake dropped to his knees, cradling her. "It's okay. I'll carry you if I have to." Melissa's hands clutched his shirt, pulling herself closer. Her lips brushed against his, desperate, trembling. For a fleeting second, their world shrank to just the two of them, the warmth of each other in the cold void of the woods. Love, fragile and frightened, flared in the face of fear. Amber turned away, arms wrapped around herself, muttering, "We're not getting out of this. Not all of us." The silence grew heavier. No crickets, no wind. Just the sound of Melissa's uneven breathing and Jake's heart hammering in his chest. And then, something else. A slow shift through the leaves, a heavy body sliding unseen. From the shadows, two black eyes gleamed for a heartbeat before vanishing. The forest was no longer theirs. It belonged to the predator. The anaconda moved with unnatural silence, its body gliding through wet grass and rotting leaves. Every scale caught the faintest shimmer of moonlight as it circled, closing in. From its view, the humans were fragile prey, injured, exhausted, blind to the danger behind them. It tightened its coils around a fallen log, testing strength, waiting for the moment to strike. Jake helped Melissa up, wrapping his arm around her waist. She clung to him, leaning into his chest, whispering, "Don't leave me." He kissed the top of her head, holding her tighter. Never. But the forest whispered otherwise. Every step dragged them deeper into a maze where every trail circled back. Every sound belonged to the serpent. Branches cracked again. Water shifted. Leaves trembled. Amber's eyes widened as she turned the flashlight outward. The beam caught nothing, only empty space. But from the predator's view, the hunt had already begun. The forest opened suddenly, and there it was, a shack, leaning sideways, swallowed by vines and moss. Its windows were shattered, its door hanging crooked, as if the building itself had been wounded by the swamp. Jake half-carried Melissa across the clearing, her injured ankle dragging with every step. Amber trailed behind, flashlight trembling in her hand, eyes darting at the trees. Inside, the air smelled of rust and mildew. Broken boots lay scattered on the floor, their leather shredded by something sharper than time. Claw marks gouged across the walls told a story no one wanted to read. Empty shotgun shells rolled in the dirt like forgotten relics of someone else's last stand. Jake shoved the door closed and slid a broken plank across it. The wood groaned but held. For the first time since the river, there was a wall between them and the night. Melissa slumped against him, her chest heaving. "We're safe, right?" Her voice cracked, fragile as if she didn't even believe her own words. Amber shook her head. "Safe? Nothing about this place is safe. Can't you feel it? The swamp isn't just killing us, it's keeping us here." Jake snapped back, frustration boiling over. "Stop. I don't care what you think this place is. I'm not letting it take anyone else." Melissa reached up, touching his cheek with trembling fingers. Her eyes searched his, desperate, wet with tears. In that moment, she kissed him, clinging, terrified but filled with love. It wasn't passion, it was survival, a plea, a reminder of what they still had in a world collapsing around them. Amber turned away, pressing her back to the wall, muttering, "We're cursed." The lantern flickered low, shadows creeping across the ceiling beams. The wood above them creaked, stretching like a rope under weight. Jake froze, breath caught in his throat. Slowly, he raised the flashlight toward the rafters. At first, nothing, just broken boards and vines pushing through cracks in the roof. Then the silence thickened. No wind, no rain, no sound except the faint rasp of scales dragging across wood. Melissa's eyes widened. "Jake." The roof buckled. A massive coil dropped through the shadows, smashing the floorboards with bone-crushing weight. Dust exploded into the air. The serpent's body uncoiled, its muscles rippling like iron cables under slick, glistening scales. Its head lowered, tongue flicking, tasting their fear. Amber screamed. Jake shoved Melissa behind him, but the snake moved faster than thought. With a deafening crack, the rafters collapsed fully, and the anaconda struck. Melissa's scream tore through the shack as the serpent wrapped around her, lifting her off the ground. Her arms reached for Jake, eyes filled with terror and love in the same breath. "Don't let go." Jake lunged forward, grabbing her wrist, pulling with all his strength. For one agonizing second, it seemed he could hold her, but the coils tightened, dragging her back, suffocating, unstoppable. Her grip slipped, her scream echoed. Then she was gone, swallowed into the dark mass of scales. Jake collapsed against the dirt floor, sobbing, pounding his fists until his knuckles bled. Amber grabbed him by the shoulders, yanking him upright. "We have to move now." They stumbled out the back of the shack, into the tangled woods. The night swallowed them whole. Minutes later, gasping and lost, they broke through the trees, only to freeze in disbelief. The shack stood before them again, lanterns still flickering inside, as if they had never left. The loop had closed. Rain poured from the sky in sheets, blurring the forest into a maze of dripping shadows. Jake and Amber stumbled through the mud, their clothes soaked, their breaths ragged. Every step felt heavier, every heartbeat louder in the suffocating storm. Then, out of the darkness, it appeared. A stretch of pavement, cracked but unmistakable, cutting through the swamp like a scar. An old road. Jake dropped to his knees, laughing breathlessly. We made it. We actually found a way out. His voice was hoarse, half hope, half exhaustion. Amber wasn't so sure. Her flashlight beam swept across faded yellow lines on the asphalt, washed pale by decades of rain. No signs, no fences, just blacktop stretching ahead and vanishing into trees. But compared to the swamp, it felt like salvation. They followed it, their footsteps echoing strangely against the wet surface. But with every mile, the storm grew worse. The rain slapped their faces. Thunder cracked so close it rattled their bones. The flashlight in Amber's hand flickered weakly, its battery fading. She shook it, desperate to keep the light alive. Jake grabbed her arm, steadying her. Don't stop. Just keep moving. His words were firm, but his eyes betrayed fear. Then, through the thunder, a sound pierced the night. A car horn. Both froze, heads snapping toward the sound. A horn, faint but clear, echoing down the wet highway. Someone's out there, Jake shouted. He pulled Amber forward, sprinting into the storm. Their feet splashed through puddles. Their lungs burned. The horn blared again, closer now. Hope surged through them like fire. But when they turned the bend, there was nothing. No headlights, no car, just darkness. The horn fell silent, leaving only rain hammering the road. Amber's chest heaved. It's not real, she whispered, voice shaking. It's leading us back. Jake shook his head violently. No, I heard it. I know what I heard. Lightning split the sky, white light flooding the forest for one frozen instant. And that's when they saw it. The trees around them were not trees at all. Massive coils glistened in the storm, thick as tree trunks, wrapped around the clearing. The serpent had encircled the road, its body blending with the forest itself. Its scales shone wet under the flash of lightning, every ripple of muscle a silent warning of its strength. The light vanished. Darkness swallowed them again. Amber gasped, clutching Jake's sleeve. We're surrounded. In the pitch black, the sound came slow, steady, deliberate. The slide of a colossal body over wet pavement. The hiss of breath between fangs. The swamp itself seemed to inhale. Jake raised his flare gun, his hand trembling, his breath shallow. The red casing gleamed faintly in the dying beam of the flashlight. His thumb brushed the trigger, but before he could fire, lightning struck again. The serpent's head hung above them, enormous, eyes glinting like black stones. The thunder roared, the flashlight died, and the coils shifted closer. Every path forward collapsed into the same truth. There was no road out, only the swamp. The storm broke just long enough for them to see it. At the edge of the swamp road, half hidden by weeds, stood an old gas station. The roof sagged, pumps rusted, leaning like crooked teeth. A neon sign buzzed weakly. Letters burned out until only a single flicker of red remained. Jake gripped Amber's arm, dragging her closer. See? We're not alone. Someone built this place. Maybe there's fuel. Maybe there's something. Amber's face was pale, her lips trembling. Or maybe it's just another trick, but she followed him anyway. The front door hung off its hinges. Inside, the air smelled of wet dust and old gasoline. Shelves lay bare, long stripped of anything useful. A shattered cash register sat crooked on the counter, coated in grime. Jake stumbled toward the back, finding a rusty generator in the corner. He yanked the cord. Once, twice. Sparks spat. Then silence. Come on, his voice cracked. Just give me something. Amber's flashlight beam caught a wooden crate near the wall. She dropped to her knees, prying it open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a flare gun. Her chest tightened with fragile hope as she cradled it in her hands. Jake, look. For the first time all night, his eyes softened. That's it. That's how we scare it off. But even as the words left his mouth, the sound came. A low creak, the floorboards shifting under a weight far too heavy to be human. Amber froze. Jake's eyes darted toward the broken windows. The glass reflected movement, scales sliding silently in the dark. Predator POV, the serpent watched through the cracks, its vision slicing through shadow. The humans moved slow, weak, predictable. The female crouched low, hands trembling on the flare. The male exposed, bent over the generator. Perfect. The floor beneath them bulged, wood splintered. Then the gas station erupted. A massive coil burst through the floorboards. shattering the counter, throwing shards of glass into the air. Dust and smoke choked the room. Amber screamed as the snake's body coiled around her, dragging her off her feet. The flare gun slipped from her grasp, clattering across the floor. Jake lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "Hold on. I've got you." His voice cracked, his eyes wide with terror. Amber's face twisted in agony, her nails clawing into his arm. Tears streaked through the dirt on her cheeks. "Don't let it take me." The serpent yanked harder. Her scream echoed through the ruined station as the coils crushed, dragging her backward through the hole it had smashed in the floor. Jake held on until his fingers bled, but her grip slipped away. In seconds she was gone, swallowed into the swamp beneath the building. The silence that followed was worse than the scream. Jake collapsed against the wall, his body shaking, blood dripping from his torn hands. His eyes locked on the flare gun lying in the dirt, inches from where Amber had dropped it. Slowly he reached for it, his fingers trembling. But outside, through the rain, something shifted. The serpent's shadow slid past the broken glass, circling the building once more. Jake staggered out into the storm, bloodied, clutching the flare gun. The pumps stood like rusted sentries, and in the silence between thunder, the truth hit him. He was alone. The woods swallowed Jake whole. Rain dripped from the canopy, each drop echoing louder than his heartbeat. His steps dragged through mud, uneven, his leg gashed from where splinters and glass had cut deep inside the ruined station. Every movement sent pain burning up his side. He limped forward anyway. There was nowhere else to go. The swamp pressed close, trees rising like black pillars. The beam of his stolen flashlight flickered weakly, painting only fragments of the nightmare around him. His breaths rasped in the silence, shallow, trembling. Then, something on the ground. Jake froze, lowering the beam. A baseball cap, soaked, its bill bent, mud clinging to the letters stitched across the front. Tyler's cap, the same one he had seen vanish beneath the river hours ago. Jake bent down, his bloody fingers brushing over the brim. His chest tightened. No, it can't be. The forest gave no answer. He pushed forward, hobbling through tangled roots. Branches clawed at his clothes. A few yards ahead, the light caught another shape. A phone, lying in the mud, screen still glowing faintly red. Recording. Melissa's phone. The timer ticked upward, steady, as if it had never been dropped. Jake lifted it, and for a second his reflection stared back at him. Hollow eyes, soaked hair plastered to his forehead, lips trembling. Behind him, just beyond the frame, shadows shifted like something enormous, weighted out of sight. He hurled the phone away, shaking his head violently. But the swamp wasn't finished. At the base of a rotting cypress tree, a torn sleeve hung limp on a root. Amber's jacket, shredded at the shoulder, swayed in the damp breeze. Jake staggered backward, clutching his head. His breath came faster. The swamp was resetting everything. The objects weren't left behind by chance. They had been placed, returned, as if the forest itself wanted to remind him of each life taken. Pain shot through his leg. He collapsed onto the mud, teeth clenched, groaning. His hands pressed the wound, but blood seeped between his fingers. He felt the weakness rising, exhaustion pulling him down. The silence grew unbearable. Then he heard it. A voice, faint, far away, calling his name. Jake, Melissa's voice. He staggered up, swaying, eyes darting through the trees. Melissa? His voice cracked, desperate. Another voice echoed, sharper this time. Tyler's laugh, mocking, familiar, echoing like a ghost between the trunks. Jake spun around, heart racing. Tyler, where are you? Then Amber's voice pleading, run, Jake, run. His chest heaved. Tears blurred his vision. He stumbled forward, chasing the echoes. His flashlight sputtered and died, plunging him into blackness. Predator POV. Through the undergrowth, the serpent watched. It followed each stagger, each desperate lunge, its massive body gliding silently over mud. Its tongue flicked the air, tasting fear as clearly as scent. Patient, silent, waiting for the final collapse. Jake clawed through vines, blind, now, chasing voices that weren't real. The echoes bounced between the trees, carrying the cruel illusion of hope. His foot caught on a root. He crashed down, face first into the mud. His flare gun slipped from his pocket, skidding out of reach. He lay there, gasping, body trembling, pain screaming from his leg. The voices whispered around him. circling like the predator itself. Jake, help us. This way. He closed his eyes, tears spilling into the dirt. He knew the truth. They were gone, and the swamp wanted him next. A branch snapped. Heavy scales slid across the mud, inches away. Jake's eyes opened wide, his breath caught. He reached out blindly for the flare gun, but before his hand touched it, the forest went silent. The predator was right beside him. The forest broke apart, and Jake staggered into the clearing. Before him stretched the same Blackwater River where it had all begun. The current rolled slowly, as if time itself had slowed, carrying with it the echoes of every scream he had left behind. Beer bottles bobbed gently at the shoreline, clinking against one another in a mocking rhythm. Jake collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, blood from his gashed leg mixing with the mud beneath him. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes locked on the water. He had run, fought, begged, and bled, but every trail had led back here. The swamp allowed no escape. He raised the flare gun in shaking hands. The metal felt heavy, far heavier than it should. His finger hovered over the trigger. For one long moment, his vision blurred with tears. He saw Melissa's face pressed to his shoulder, Tyler's mocking grin, Amber's warning eyes. One by one, they faded back into the shadows, leaving him alone. Jake pulled the trigger. The flare exploded upward, a streak of red fire tearing through the night. The glow washed across the river, painting the swamp in blood-colored light. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the water churned. Scales broke the surface, glistening like wet armor. The serpent rose, its head towering above the tree line, eyes gleaming black and cold. Its body unfurled behind it, coils stretching wider than the road, muscles rippling with a power that belonged to something older than men, older than the forest itself. The flare light burned across its scales, but the beast did not retreat. It watched Jake, unblinking, tongue flicking the air. Jake screamed into the storm, defiant, broken. "Come on, I'm still here." The swamp answered with movement. The serpent struck. The coils snapped forward, faster than thought, wrapping him in a crushing grip. The breath was ripped from his lungs as the air thundered from his chest. His scream died against the hiss of scales and the pounding rush of water. The flare dropped from his hand, fizzing out in the mud. In one merciless motion, the serpent's jaws opened wide, and Jake vanished into darkness. The river went still. The bottles drifted softly, clinking against one another in gentle rhythm. The flare's smoke curled upward, fading into the rain. The swamp exhaled, calm once more, as if nothing had ever disturbed it. And on the opposite bank, the crooked wooden sign still leaned against its post.